Hey, I'm Hunt, and this is Hunt on LSU, your channel for LSU Fighting Tiger football talk. Enjoy the video. We want you to leave a comment below, hit that like button, and subscribe right below the video. Enjoy. Right now, news from the transfer portal today. Expected that LSU would have some attrition post-spring. That's just the world that we live in here in college football, but I was certainly curious as to where that attrition would come from. One of these new announcements is not necessarily attrition from LSU because you weren't counting him against this class anyway, and that's John Emery Jr. John Emery announced that he's in the transfer portal and will potentially look for a new home to play one last season of college football. John Emery came in the same class as Derek Stingley Jr. and Anthony Bradford. He was in the same signing class as a quarterback who many of you have probably forgotten about in Peter Parrish. And baseball, football, five-star recruit, first-round draft potential Mo Hampton was in John Emery's class as well. It was the class of 2019. He has been in Baton Rouge for a very, very, very long time. He has had his highs and lows. I thought he looked great as a true freshman in mop-up time for that 2019 team. Certainly had his two moments against Alabama, one a long touchdown in the 2020 game that they lost, and then a huge play in the game that LSU did win in 2022 to get the first touchdown on that swing pass out of the backfield. A huge talent and a guy that battled through a lot, whether it was the off season that he was deemed ineligible to play, which is, I'm assuming, where he gets this eligibility year back, certainly has the COVID year to get back. Injuries certainly suffered down there near the north end zone on the carry this past year, and a guy that has just battled a lot and has decided he wants to try to play one more year in college football, and you certainly do support that. Number one running back in the nation, LSU was fighting Georgia for his commitment. He was committed to the Bulldogs, visited LSU for that 2018 game that was such a great one that LSU beat Georgia in on that Saturday afternoon in Death Valley, and ended up at LSU, and did have some really good moments, but I think we imagine things could go differently here in Baton Rouge, and they did. Hopefully for him that he has some success at his next stop. The next transfer portal entrant surprised me a little bit, not based on potentially where Joseph Cryer was on the depth chart, just based on timing. Joe Cryer signed with LSU in December and early enrolled. Offensive lineman out of Natchitoches Central, right there in North Louisiana. A late take in this class, a player that was committed to Ole Miss, and that LSU brought in. And at the time, I thought it made a lot of sense. In-state player, has kind of that long, lean frame that Brian Kelly really, really likes in offensive linemen. And, sure, you take that in-state player, and you realize that it may take some time for that player to build up to be a factor on your team. And I have a hard time believing that Joe Cryer thought he was going to come in the spring and just immediately spring to the top of the depth chart when LSU returns 4 offensive linemen. I don't know anything other than he signed, enrolled, and left after one spring. I don't know if that had to do with Brad Davis. I don't know if that had to do with the caliber player that were coming in his class. I don't know if he didn't like it at LSU. I don't know anything. It's just that's a really quick exit for a player who had signed his letter of intent and enrolled. I have no idea how the SEC handles players who have only been in college for 4 months, if he can transfer to an SEC school or not. In this cycle, in this transfer portal cycle, if you transfer out or enter the transfer portal right now, you cannot go SEC school to SEC school without sitting out. Now, maybe Joe Cryer's fine sitting out because he didn't figure he was going to play as a freshman anyway, but just a really quick exit. Now, Brad Davis's room is loaded with a bunch of dudes. Now, you're going to lose a lot of them after this coming season. You're going to have to replace essentially the entire starting offensive line, save DJ Chester, very likely. So you're going to have to build that depth up this year and have it come to fruition next year, very likely. And who knows, Joe Cryer could or may not have been a part of that, but it appears he will not be a part of that at this point as he has announced his intention to enter the transfer portal. So when you look at this LSU roster size and number, LSU is now comfortably under the 85. They have room to add 2 or 3 players if they want. We know that they are hosting multiple defensive tackles. Philip Bliddy committed to Auburn over the weekend, so he's out. But there are other players very much alive on LSU's board to potentially join the fray, and we know that defensive tackle will be the first news on that front. There's no real timeline on it because it's not like National Signing Day. Like, the portal's open. Just commit whenever you're ready to go. And at this point, LSU has not had a defensive tackle jump into the boat. There is optimism surrounding Simeon Barrow from Michigan State. There is a hopefulness around Dominic Williams from TCU. But again, you're still waiting on visits to determine how things are going to shake out. We know they have to add defensive tackles. They certainly had room to add defensive tackles. If there's another player or two that could be a take, like, why not? If you've got the room, you've got the room. Go ahead and make it happen. So we'll see. As news breaks, we'll get you that. But John Emery looking for another year of college football, and Joe Cryer has decided that his time in Baton Rouge has come to a close after just one semester. He will head to the transfer portal and see where he ends up next. Our Tuesday show is always brought to you by Pluckers. We're back with Sharif Aishat coming up next. Hey, thanks for watching Hunt on LSU. Before you get out of here, do us a couple of favors. Hit that like button, leave your comments below, and subscribe to the channel for all your Fighting Tiger football talk. See you next time.